Homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. The supreme Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered, even in millions of eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, may we all generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now let's continue our study of the words of my perfect teacher. Now we are discussing the second outline, which is to contemplate the impermanence of beings living in the universe. We've just discussed how everything in the outer universe changes moment by moment. There is nothing permanent, including the houses we live in or our own mattresses. These are all impermanent. The sutra halls, where many of you are studying, reflecting, and meditating, are also impermanent. I recently gave this example to many Dharma friends. The assembly hall has changed many times, since the time from Phuntsok Rinpoche started teaching Dharma until now. Since from I gave teachings to Han Fourfold Sangha, that is, monks, nuns, lay women, and laymen, our assembly hall has also changed multiple times. Even now, as you study the way of the Bodhisattva, many lay people in the city have changed their places of study multiple times. This is the sign of impermanence. We can all think about how our own places of residence have changed. For example, what kind of environment did you live in when you were very young? What kind of environment and house did you live in while you were studying? What is it like now? How will it change in the future? When we start to observe from many perspectives, we should be able to understand that the outer universe is entirely impermanent. Next, we must understand that all beings and all lives are impermanent, without exception. Of course, without contemplating on impermanence, we may regard impermanence as a vague concept, and everyone may think things are impermanent from a general perspective. I used to encounter the scientific discussion on impermanence when I was in middle school. I have learned that all things are in a state of change, and there are no idling phenomena. From the physicists from the previous generation, although some claimed there were static phenomena, the later scholars completely refuted their views. So, in the end, it has been concluded that everything is in motion. I had a teacher, who wasn't very nice to me though, because I was studying Buddhism, and there were great teachings on the law of cause and effect in the Buddhism, that good and evil actions will have corresponding karmic consequences. Once I mentioned this in front of this teacher, he was a bit unhappy, and said, "Although everything is in motion and changing, your way of thinking is still problematic." Moreover, once when I asked a question, he criticized me in front of the whole class. That teacher didn't believe in Buddhism at all, and he might have already passed away into the great peace now. I still remembered how he called my name in class and his facial expression. His mouth was all twisted, saying, "Your way of thinking is problematic." He also said to me that I would be good for nothing when I grew up and would surely break the law. Now I have grown up, and obviously I have successfully failed to fulfill his prophecy. So indeed everything is subject to change, and there is no phenomenon that remains constant. I think this concept exists in worldly knowledge as well. However, it's not as systematic and in-depth as in Buddhism, and certainly not as detailed as what we're learning in the words of my perfect teacher, which guides us to practice by integrating it within our own mind. Such teachings are indeed rare. In reality, everyone, including Buddhists, often claims that all phenomena are impermanent. Everyone would acknowledge this point. But I think most people don't have such sincere conviction about impermanence in their mind. To be fully convinced of impermanence makes people have a sense of urgency, not holding on to that things will last. and it will lead one eager to learn the Dharma. If people are fully convinced, they would think, life is too short, and it's hard to know when I will die. Such thoughts, I believe, is absent in the minds of most people, including many scholars and some so-called practitioners. That is because impermanence hasn't really permeated their minds yet. Whether in Zen or Tibetan Buddhism, some eminent masters and some good practitioners have such strong motivation for practice because they apply the principle of impermanence, day and night, to inspire and encourage their Dharma practice. If you wish to be diligent, you must put effort into the practice of impermanence. Of course, it's easy for anyone to generate insight on impermanence temporarily and occasionally. For example, after we've attended a Buddhist teaching class or read a good book, or a family member or relative has died, due to various causes and conditions, we might generate a feeling in our mind, everything is impermanent. I should be mindful and practice well in the future. Such thoughts are occasionally easy to arouse, but it's not easy to keep this view of impermanence permeating in our minds for a long time. This kind of practice is rare for many people, so we must frequently study, contemplate, and read the preliminary practices. If we don't do this, an ordinary person's state of mind can be easily tempted by external circumstances. In this way, one's temporary inner state is like the sun rays shine through clouds. It can suddenly be obscured by the dark clouds and such outer circumstances. That's why past eminent masters emphasize that the preliminary practices are also the main practice, even more important than the main practice. I remember there was a practitioner before. She always talked about the great perfection and some advanced topics in Zen tradition, and placed so much importance on these advanced practices. However, when it came to impermanence and the suffering of samsara, she just brushed it off. Recently, I've heard that many people claim that she may have some state of realization before. I believe she did have some temporary insights before. But to have it deeply rooted in one's mind for a long time, one must be devoted to the preliminary practice. The completion of preliminary practice is not just about completing certain amount of practices. The quality really matters. For each guided practice, one should experience it fully and take it into heart and mind stream. As I said a few days ago, there should be a real transformation in one's mind. This is the state we should aim. When you pray to your guru with sincere devotion, see if your tears would flow out. If tears don't come out, at least your expression should show devotion towards all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and great teachers. When you meditate on impermanence, you can't just go on autopilot mode and only mouth the words impermanence. It is superficial, not to mention your mind. Even your muscle doesn't move. Not to mention muscle, even your skin doesn't move. You mind have no deep conviction about impermanence in this way. If impermanence is absent in your mind, this can't be good. The best practice should be a sense of tremor that comes from deep within the marrow. You must obtain a certain experience. A genuine insight is very powerful. Therefore, when we practice, I hope everyone doesn't just focus on superficial formalities and rituals. Of course, these are virtuous actions, but these don't really mean much if the essence is missing. No matter which practice you are doing, you should generate a feeling deep down from your mind. When you are in the preliminary practices, if you feel connected with the practice, just like you've tasted its flavor, you won't change easily in the future. If others praises the practice of impermanence, then you start the practice. However, it won't work if you don't taste the practice's flavor. Later, if someone says practicing impermanence is meaningless, and you should practice something else, you might say, yes, and follow that person's advice. Why you change so easily? It is because you haven't tasted the flavor of Dharma practice yet. As soon as someone else says something, you would immediately be persuaded, if you yourself know that the practice is truly extraordinary. You will be completely certain of it. This resolve is not easily swayed or changed by external circumstances. Let's start learning about the impermanence of beings living in the universe. The text says, "From the summit of the highest heavens to the very depths of hell, there is not a single being who can escape death." We should understand that from the highest realm of neither perception nor non-perception down to just above the hell of ultimate torment, including the beings in the hells, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and gods. All countless beings, which is not just the 6.5 billion humans on Earth. In addition to humans, it includes animals in the water and all living beings in the outside world. None can escape death. Of course, with the exception of a very few who have attained the level of Vidyadhara with power over life, or some eminent masters who can keep their physical bodies intact and directly fly to the Pure Land. Everyone must eventually face death. As the letter of consolation states, "Have you ever seen, in all the earth or heavens, a single being born who did not die? Have you heard of such a thing? Have you even imagined it could be so? All that is born must surely die." No one, in any realm, even in the God realms, has ever seen or heard of someone who was born but did not die. Indeed, we never even question whether someone will die. It is an absolute certainty. From this scriptural, we can understand that whatever is born will inevitably die in this world. All is inseparable from death. As long as there is birth, there will certainly be death. There was once a boy monk who broke his master's teacup. Knowing he was in big trouble, he didn't dare to mention the accident outright. I forgot that story, but it seems you remember clearly. The novice monk was the young Ikkyu, right? Yes. It was only after his master's return that Ikkyu asked, "Master, is there anything that will stay forever once it has come into existence?" The master replied, "Everything that is born must die." Ikkyu then showed him the shattered pieces of his broken teacup, saying, "Then this means your teacup has died." Because of his wit, his master didn't scold him. Any being in the world, whether human or other beings, all living beings, from the higher realms downwards, as long as they are born, will all die. Have we ever seen or heard of any being that won't die in this world? Is there any reasonable doubt about the possibility of eternal existence of this being or that being? Some may talk about immortality. But if we're talking about immortality, isn't it actually referring to certain attainments in religious contexts? But these attainments are of a completely different category. Apart from this, in the world, there is truly no place where beings are born but could avoid death. Whether on the ground, in the air, or in the mountains, a place where beings never die absolutely doesn't exist. As it was said in The Collection of Impermanence, neither in the space, nor in the sea, nor in the mountains and forests, there is no such a place where the Lord of Death won't reach. This means whether in the space, in the sea, or in the mountains, there is absolutely no such place where the Lord of Death can't go or can't penetrate. We can't escape death by hiding in the sea or by hiding in the sky. There's indeed no place where one can be born without death. If there were indeed a deathless place, given the great compassion of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they would have put countless sentient beings there. However, this is just impossible. I think I've told this story before. Two monks studying Buddhist logic went to an old lady's house for accommodation. They arrived in the evening, and it was about to get dark. Hence, they said, "Compassionate one, can we stay at your house overnight?" Besides her daughter, the old lady had no one else living with her. The old lady asked, "Are you two monks specializing in Buddhist logic? If so, you had better not stay at my house. Otherwise, you might give me some difficult time, which would be troublesome." They said, "Yes, we do study Buddhist logic, but we won't give you any difficult time. We really have nowhere else to stay tonight. Could you let us stay for one night here?" Since they've said so, the old lady can only reluctantly agree. Then they had dinner, and after dinner the old lady felt a bit itchy and found a small louse on her body. In Tibet now, some areas might still have poor hygiene conditions with many lice inside the clothes. The old lady took the small louse out and told her daughter, "Take it away and put it in a place where it won't die." What she meant was a relatively safe place, rather than throwing it on the road. It would be safer to put the louse in the grass or inside clothes. At this moment the monk said, "Compassionate lady, if there's a place where one never dies, could you also put the two of us there as well?" The old lady was quite annoyed and said, "You monks of Buddhist logic always try to nitpick the flaws in others' speech like this. Didn't you just promise me you wouldn't give me a hard time? If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have let you two stay at my house." This story also shows that there's no place where death never arrives. Absolutely not. If there was a place where one never dies, people with money, power, and capacity might first want to buy immortality insurance or retirement insurance. People are willing to spend any amount of money on these. However, this insurance can't guarantee anything. It is a certainty that everyone dies. Everyone must experience the stage of death at different times. Even if some people understand, one day I will die for sure. They don't reflect on, when will I die? Will I die today or tomorrow? Everyone understands they will certainly die, but the reflection of the uncertainty of where and when they'll die is absent, except for a very few good practitioners. Therefore, the primary reason for our laziness is that we don't practice impermanence well. For us particularly, born in this degenerate age where lifespan is uncertain, death will surely come soon. In the first age of this kalpa, a person could live for 80,000 years, 60,000 years, an extensively long period of time. At that time, humans' lifespan was very long. But now we are in the degenerate age. It's said that Buddha would appear when human lifespan is 100 years, but now human lifespan is very short. So death will soon come upon us. Death gets closer and closer from the moment we are born. Just like the sun rise in the east and set in the west. Minute by minute, step by step, we begin to move towards death. Approaching death. Life can only get shorter, never longer. Our lifespan is like a leaky pool and the water inside will never be full, which is unfortunately only decreasing instead of increasing. Death approaches relentlessly, never pausing even for a moment, like the shadow of a mountain as the sun sets. Those who live in the mountainous areas may know this well. In the afternoon, as the setting sun descends in the west, the area of shadow gradually increases moment by moment. Similarly, many people are very happy on their birthdays, when others are singing the happy birthday song to them. In fact, this is unwise. It's just like when a butcher is approaching a yak. That is to be slaughtered, and we would host a celebration party for the yak, while singing happy birthday to the poor yak that is getting closer to death, because that poor yak is about to be in the hands of the butcher. I doubt if the yak would be happy about the party, as it's about to be slaughtered by the butcher. Sometimes people's behaviors are worth observing and reflecting. Do you know when or where you will die? Could it be tomorrow or even tonight? Can you be certain you won't die in this very moment, between one breath and the next? Because all phenomena are impermanent, no one can be certain that they absolutely won't die tomorrow or they absolutely won't die tonight. Can you truly admit to yourself that you absolutely won't die between your breaths? Do we have such assurance? Absolutely not. No matter how wise, eloquent, or knowledgeable in doctrine a person is, this person dare not assert, I certainly won't die now. It's just a very coarse idea without any reasoning. People think to themselves that I probably won't die. It's just holding on to false hope and taking a reckless chance on death. As taught in Buddhist logic, we need to come to a conclusion with proper threefold logic, such as, I definitely won't die now because of such and such reasons. Can we come up with a complete logical reasoning and cause? It's absolutely impossible. For example, if you say, I definitely won't die tomorrow. Why? Can you provide any solid evidence? No one can do so. We should be aware of our truth state of being. Therefore, the original vows of Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva Sutra says, the great ghost of impermanence arrives at an unscheduled time. We never set an appointment with this great ghost of impermanence. However, it can suddenly appear outside our expectation. When it arrives, it takes our lives. At that time, our entire life undergoes a drastic change. Sometimes when we witness a person dying, it can strike us greatly. A few days ago, I went to a dying lady's home in the town of Upper Lakuma. She hadn't yet taken her last breath, but she couldn't move anymore. She knew I came to recite sutras for her. At that time, all her children and relatives were surrounding her. Everyone was crying. It seemed she knew what was happening. When she heard me reciting sutras for her, she tried to put her palms together. Her family's financial condition was quite good. At that moment, I thought, she couldn't take anything with her at the moment of death after working so hard all her life. Whether she liked it or not, this was the reality. Fortunately, the way she left was not bad. I heard she had been ill for 1 or 2 months. She herself felt there might be no hope this time, so she had made some preparations. Unlike her, quite a few of us might not have such preparations or too late for the preparations. As it said in The Way of the Bodhisattva, then is the sudden coming of the Lord of Death, and oh, the thought, alas, I'm finished. Lord of Death comes out of the blue, and we haven't yet prepared. So as we can see, life is truly fragile. None of us have thought about it this way. Instead, we naively think that death won't arrive too soon. The biggest problem is that people don't have the principle of impermanence in mind. Without conviction about impermanence, practice is bound to fail. As it says in The Collection of Deliberate Sayings, who can be certain of living until tomorrow? Now is the time to prepare, for death's armies show us no favor. We don't know whether we'll die tomorrow. So as long as we can still breathe and we have a chance for practice, we must engage in diligent Dharma practice. Otherwise, do you think you are a good friend with the Lord of Death, or are you relatives? If you were relatives with the Lord of Death, then you might be able to build a good relationship with him, or bribe him, so that you can count on him. When I die, please don't let me fall into lower realms. When it's time, please prepare me to go to the Pure Land. However, no one has this assurance. Are we really good friends with the Lord of Death, so that we are not afraid at all? Have we already established a good relationship with him? If not, why aren't we practicing contemplation? So now, in our daily lives, if we always have the thought, will I die? then we will surely be diligent in practice. For example, when you go to the bathroom, you think, will I die right away? When you go to fetch water, you think, will I die immediately? When you go to bed praying at night, you think, I may not be alive tomorrow morning. There are many related teachings from the Kadampa tradition. And Nagarjuna, too, says, life, beset by many dangers, is impermanent, like a water bubble blown by wind, between breaths of inhaling and exhaling in deep sleep. To awaken again is truly remarkable. People lie in peaceful slumber, breathing gently in and out, yet we cannot be certain that death won't come during this time, that we can sleep deeply and wake again safely. This should be considered a truly remarkable thing. Life is really between this breath and the next, which is also said in Buddha's sutras, that life is between breaths. As recorded in the Sutra of 42 chapters, the Buddha once asked his disciples, "How long is life?" Some answered, "A few days." The Buddha said, "No." Some said, "The time it takes to eat a meal." The Buddha said, "This is not correct either." Then one disciple said, "It's between this breath and the next." The Buddha agreed and nodded. Human life is extremely fragile compared to this house, which can be guaranteed to last for years or decades without natural disasters. It can be guaranteed that our house will remain intact for decades. However, can we sign a contract with anyone about our life by saying, "My life is the same as the cement buildings outside, and it won't deteriorate at all in years or 50 years. Can we get the assurance? No one has such assurance at all. As it says in Letter to a Friend, our life has many harmful aspects and very few favorable conditions, just like a bubble in a stream. If we can wake up after sleeping or take another breath after this one, this can be considered miraculous. If you didn't die last night and wake up in the morning, while brushing your teeth, you should think, how wondrous, how rare. I didn't die yesterday and I'm still alive today. Non-practitioners may wonder why it is wondrous that one wakes up living still, thinking, you couldn't have died yesterday as you weren't sick. You are in good shape. How could you die in the morning? Except for extremely rare cases. It's impossible to die so unexpectedly. But the truth is, for each of us, if we are between breaths or while sleeping at night, the house collapses, an earthquake comes, then we'd suddenly die. Who knows? It's very possible. A while ago, a practitioner was in retreat in her cabin. For unknown reasons, her cabin suddenly caught fire. When people noticed the fire, she had already died inside. During the morning of that day, she certainly wouldn't have thought, today is my last day. Similarly, none of us would think, oh, I will die this year, or I will die next year. If we really think this way, we will make some preparations in advance. Once, a Dharma friend said, sometimes death makes me so terrified. We should all prepare in advance. Otherwise, it is so terrified without knowing when we will die. This person was skeptical yet intrigued by Buddhism, who wished to live like beings of Uttarakuru, the northern continent, whose lives are of a fixed lifespan. But in my view, living a fixed lifespan or not doesn't matter that much. Everyone is going to die soon one day anyway. For example, among the several Dharma students sitting here today, some of you may be died by this time next year. But since we don't have clairvoyance, we don't know for sure if this includes me or you. Nobody would know. Indeed, impermanence is truly frightening. However, some people only focus on this life and don't care what will happen at the moment of death and after death. Even worse, they don't have the courage to face all these. When the death issue is brought up, they immediately avoid and refuse to discuss it. It is not wise to avoid talking about death. Instead, we must face it and prepare for death with Dharma practice. A practitioner who has practiced impermanence well can easily accept anything, including death, when death comes to themselves or others. As we often see, good practitioners even smile when facing their own death. They don't cry in agony when losing relatives and friends, because they have understood that life is as uncertain and fragile as a candle in the wind. There is nothing eternal. In comparison, people who haven't studied Buddhism feel so awful when encountering their own death or the death of a loved one. Such different reactions is primarily due to their lack of practice. Every one of us encounters many causes of death in life. As it is said in Nagarjuna's precious garland, the causes of death are so many, those of staying alive are so few. The causes of death are extremely numerous, while the conditions for staying alive, such as food and medicine, can become causes of death. This phenomenon is quite common. Therefore, each of us should think, I didn't die last night. It's truly rare. Some masters, when explaining the verse, in sleep, each breath departs and is again drawn in. How wondrous that we wake up living still. Say it means to attain great awakening between this breath and the next is really wondrous. Such explanation is not right, because below there's also an explanation. Given the content preceding and following this verse, the text is about impermanence, so it doesn't make sense that suddenly the author brings up great awakening. If this was the case, then it could be a wondrous thing. But there's no need for such an interpretation. I would also like to remind everyone here, when you give teachings to others, you should have had the transmission and understand everything in the text. Otherwise, you may cause misunderstandings. Back to the text. So here it says, everyone must think about the lifespan of all beings is indeed impermanent. Although we know that we are going to die one day, we do not really let our attitudes to life be affected by the ever-present possibility of dying. This is very crucial for everyone, no matter who they are. Some people always believe, I will die one day. Perhaps I'll die when I'm young, or perhaps when I'm old. But because they don't have the concept of the uncertain time of death in their mind stream, their attitudes to life are not affected by the ever-present possibility of dying. As Phuntsok Rinpoche used to mention, it's crucial that we generate conviction that the time of death is uncertain. Those performing the practice of impermanence, especially practitioners in Nyingma and Kagyu lineages, place great importance on this specific meditation. After practicing for a period of time, they will surely become very diligent. Because when you think about life is so short, you can't be lazy every day. In the great Chinese Chan master Lianqi's compositions called Essays by the Bamboo Window, he quoted many poems from Tang Dynasty poets, describing how worldly people waste time, become lazy, and indulge in various leisurely activities such as sightseeing, traveling, and entertainment. Some people spend their time drinking alcohol and idling away their days. Some have indulgence in gambling. Some become obsessed with writing poetry and get lost in poetic pursuits. Master Lianqi added, although there was hardly any monastics addicted to drinking, some monastics might write poetry with various discriminating thoughts, so that it was quite common they didn't spend time practicing diligently. Nowadays, many people, including many practitioners, are driven by fabricated thoughts and haven't practiced impermanence well. They get themselves busy with many things. We must observe whether we are busy with things that are of any use for our next lifetime, or with things which made no sense in this life. If we have conviction about impermanence, we may find ourselves constantly contemplating the possibility of death occurring at any given moment. For example, when you go out, you might think, will I die on the way? This kind of mindset should naturally be in the back of your mind all the time. But if you don't practice impermanence well, you may think, I won't die. Many worldly people now think, what will I eat 50 years from now? What will I drink 50 years from now? How will I live then? They end up constantly planning for things decades ahead. But within 50 years, our body and mind will definitely undergo significant changes. Many people lack the concept of the uncertainty of death. Thus, we remain constantly preoccupied with life's affairs, wasting our precious human existence in endless cycles of hope and fear about gain and loss. As such, we squander our precious human lives by fretting over our own gains and losses. The words of my perfect teacher is extraordinary. I hope you'll read over and over again the content we cover each day and truly grasp its meaning. By doing so, a genuine sense of renunciation will be forced to arise in your mind, and you will come to understand that everything is impermanent. Hence, you will no longer cling tightly to things like relationships, family, fame, and wealth. For example, even if you have wealth, it's not that important as it's impermanent. A Buddhist once told me, "What you taught us is right, just like the ants, who accumulate some wealth with great effort every day, but lose all they collect due to a hailstorm. Similarly, when the hailstorm of the financial crisis came, we may also lose the wealth we have accumulated throughout our lifetime. Everything is gone, completely empty. One can only look at the boundless blue sky." If you practice impermanence well, you can think of many metaphors which can help you generate conviction about impermanence. If you don't practice impermanence well, you would complain and blame others. I'm really unlucky. What should I do? Should I commit suicide by jumping off a building or overdosing on sleeping pills? You would always think this way. You don't know the impermanent nature of everything, which is always in motion. Hence, you may feel life is unfair when faced with sudden change, like an attack that comes upon you. In fact, any issue related to sickness or that happened in our life, or any conflict with others, is the result of past actions we committed. Good and evil actions will have corresponding karmic consequences. As I mentioned earlier in today's class, when I mentioned the law of cause and effect in front of my school teacher, he said to me, "Your way of thinking is problematic." No, it is not at all. I have the right to explain this riddle myself. Next, the text says, while we are immersed in exhaustively pursuing this life's comfort, happiness, and fame, the Lord of Death might suddenly appear before us, teeth bared, black noose in hand. At that moment, neither mighty armies nor great power, neither abundant wealth nor scholarly eloquence, neither beautiful form nor swift steeds will be of any help. Many people, whether working hard or living joyfully, chase after happiness, prosperity, and wealth in life. They never thought when they will die. Yet, as they immerse themselves in this state of indulgence, death can suddenly arrive without warning. Here it is portrayed as the Lord of Death, holding a black rope in hand, with bared fangs and a menacing face. The Lord of the Bardo realm, or the Lord of Death, is always portrayed this way, which is quite common in both Han Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism. For some beings, they indeed experience such visions at the time of death. For some, the Lord of Death appears before they stop breathing. For others, the Lord of Death appears after they've stopped breathing. But not everyone will necessarily have the same experience. Whenever the Lord of Death comes before you, no matter how many armies you possess, it's still of no use. If having armies truly prevented death, some countries' heads of military commissions and some chiefs of staff would simply not die at all, because they would have thousands of soldiers ready to protect them by surrounding them. However, when death arrives, these armies can only send wreaths, Except this, there's nothing they can do. When those with great power and influence face death, such as a country's president, or the head of state, or some of the world's most authoritative leaders, if there were a way for the entire nation to dedicate itself fully to protecting them, it still wouldn't work. If abundant wealth could help get deathlessness, I think some of entrepreneurs, big CEOs, and tycoons would have traded millions of dollars, even all of their wealth. I've seen some rich people went to the hospital, willing to spend millions to request a transplant of heart or liver, as long as they could extend their lives, even if it's just for 5 more years. When I was in Shanghai before, I heard about a wealthy entrepreneur who was very pitiful. He looked wealthy, and the clothes he wore were quite high-end. He pleaded with Doctor, "If there's any way to keep me alive, please do whatever it takes. The cost is not an issue." He would pay any price to save his life, but there was really nothing the doctor could do. The doctor had to say, "You go home and rest first, and then we'll see." If you are told, "Go home and rest first" in hospital, this might not imply good news. You may consider going to the monastery to arrange chanting sutras or start practicing phowa. It is unnecessary to cry for help. "Ah, doctor, please, I beg you." "Nurse, can you think of another way for me?" They can't think of any solution. In contrast, practitioners with conviction about impermanence react to death very differently. I once took an old practitioner to see doctor at Barkham Hospital. He was diagnosed with liver cancer. Although the doctor didn't tell him the diagnosis, he could figure out from the doctor's expression. He said, "Let's not waste time here. I'd better return to the monastery. Please don't feel sad for me. It's not painful at all." He asked to go back, hence we told him his diagnosis. He said, "There's certainly nothing they can do. All fine. It is good to go back." Upon hearing his diagnosis, his facial expression remained unchanged and delighted. This shows the ability through practice. Practitioners should have this attitude when facing death, because they have understood life's true quality. As the text says, when death arrives, abundant wealth is of no use. Neither is scholar's brilliance. No matter how eloquently you can speak, whether you're an expert or a scholar, on the day of death, you can't win your life over by any debate, whether it's with Yama's henchmen or anyone else. In addition, things like beauty, fine horses, cars, and worldly wealth or power are of no help. We might seal ourselves inside an impenetrable, armored metal chest, guarded by hundreds of thousands of strong men, bristling with sharp spears and arrows. But even that would not afford so much as a hair's breadth of protection or concealment. This is a hypothetical metaphor. Even if the dying person crawls into an impenetrable iron chest, generally in the world, iron chests are quite sturdy. Outside, there are 100,000 warriors with various weapons, with the sharp points of their weapons facing outwards, constantly protecting against the Lord of Death. Is there any way out? Absolutely not. On the day you die, there is indeed no other way out. At the moment of death, many people truly don't want to die and still want to live, whereas some practitioners want exactly the opposite. Especially for seniors who recite Buddha Amitabha's name with deep devotion, they would feel, "Ah, I am okay to leave this world at any time. I wish I could die sooner, so that I can meet Buddha Amitabha earlier. As long as I remain in the physical body, I won't be able to see Buddha Amitabha. Once I leave, I will definitely see him. There's no doubt about it." Many practitioners have such faith. However, worldly people find it hard to accept death. How can the death be so simple? How can it be happy? They seem to believe living in the human realm is the happiest. Moreover, They can't understand the bliss a practitioner may experience after their death. When a person dies, there's nothing you can change it. Not even a bit can you protect or shield. When the Lord of Death slips his black noose around the dying person's neck, one can only depart for the path to the next life, with ashen face and tearful eyes, body rigid with fear. When you take your final breath, your whole complexion would change. Additionally, some people shed tears from their eyes when they die. The entire body has already stiffened, and by that time, this person has already stopped breathing. No matter how powerful, famous, and wealthy they were, their physical body is now placed on a stand. Actually, when we see a dead body, those who have practiced contemplation of impermanence have a certain feeling, while those who have never practiced impermanence would think, "He is dead, but I am still alive. How could I die? I'm not sick at all." They have no sense of it. So in this regard, whether one has practiced impermanence makes a very big difference. When the death comes, you will certainly have to leave this world. Death cannot be resisted by warriors, commanded away by rulers, nor bribed away by the wealthy. When you are leaving the world, even if thousands of warriors wished to save you, it would still be impossible. Even highly respected and virtuous people can't command the Lord of Death to stay away. It would still be of no use. Death cannot be tempted with food or drink. There is nowhere to escape, nowhere to hide. Without refuge, without support, without friends, without help, without any recourse, not even the great compassion of the most noble ones can protect us. Even if Medicine Buddha himself were to appear, he could not extend our life. So, at that time, even if you had abundant, delicious food, there was no way to bribe anyone. Even if you go to the ocean or the ends of the earth, there's no way out. If there were a place to escape to, many people would probably go live in a place where they wouldn't die. If you knew that moving to America or Canada would guarantee you wouldn't die, many rich people would rush to get passports and go to America. But in reality, Americans, red-haired people, equally face death. When Phuntsok Rinpoche visited America before, many people there appeared to have a particular fear of death. Actually, this shouldn't be much different from black-haired people. But I feel they are even more afraid and very much want to live. Once, a person with AIDS looked very pitiful. He kept talking about how if there was a way in this world to not die, or to live for many years, he would spend much money or travel everywhere in search of renowned doctors in the world. But even so, it's still futile. When the time comes, one's own karmic conditions for survival have already come to an end. There's no place to escape. No place to hide. You can go to some other places, for example, in the mountains or in a cow dung shed, but either you can't, or there's still no refuge and no protection. If there was help from leaders, gurus, or some compassionate, venerable ones, that would be good if these people came to help you. But there's still no way. Even in our world, some Buddhas, like Buddha Amitayas or Buddha Medicine, who deeply care about the lives of beings and have extraordinary karmic connections with us from past lives, they can be said to have great compassion and loving kindness, and their powers are the most sublime. However, when facing those whose time of death has arrived, Buddhas can't stop death. Some people who are still new to Buddhism often ask, why does a person still die after receiving blessings from a tulku or from the guru? This question is quite naive, because all lifespans are impermanent. The treasury of Abhidharma lists 4 kinds of beings, including those whose merit is exhausted but not their lifespan, and those whose lifespan is exhausted but not their merit. If especially your life has run out, even if the Buddha Medicine appears, he won't be able to delay your death. However, If your merit has run out but your life hasn't, performing recitations or other pujas can be of help. So we need to analyze the situations based on different circumstances. When we finally encounter a situation where we really can't survive, we should avoid childish thoughts, like, why hasn't the Buddha blessed me? Why do I still die after reciting so many sutras? It would be best if I don't die. Indeed, even if Buddha medicine appears before beings, there would be ultimately nothing that can be done. From today, make a sincere commitment to practice spiritual teachings faithfully rather than being lazy or putting things off. Only genuine spiritual practice will truly help you when you face death. Therefore, we must absolutely not keep procrastinating. If we keep postponing practice, our practice won't succeed in the end. The biggest obstacle to our practice is our laziness. If you are very lazy, however long you live, your practice won't progress. Therefore, diligence is very important. Even if you practice diligently just for one day, the benefit you can receive is incredible. The Dhammapada says, "Better it is to live one day virtuous and meditative than to live 100 years immoral and uncontrolled." This means that if some people live to be 100 years old but hold strong wrong views and fail to cultivate virtue, their entire life is spent creating negative karma rather than practicing good deeds. On the other hand, if someone diligently practices and upholds the true Dharma for just a single day, that far surpasses 100 days of laziness and negligence. Therefore, we should never slack off. Otherwise, given our short lifespan and the many distractions on the path, when can we succeed in our Dharma practice? Practice is not something that can be accomplished in just 1 or 2 days. Instead, it requires long-term effort and dedication. The text called Treasured Instructions of Chan Temples states, "The realm attained by sages can't be accomplished within a day. Therefore, realization cannot be accomplished in just 1 or 2 days. It demands diligent practice every single day of the year for many years." Some people wonder, I have been practicing for 3 years, so why haven't I attained any enlightenment yet? I have practiced for a long time. I have already practiced for 3 years. Yes, you may claim you have practiced for 3 years, but let's closely examine these 3 years. There are 24 hours in a day. How many hours do you practice in a day? If you practice for 1 hour a day, we can calculate how many days and hours you have practiced in 3 years. According to the calculation, you might have only practiced for 1 month in 3 years on Dharma. So you can't just say, I've practiced for 3 years, as if for 3 years you didn't eat or drink at all, and all the time was spent on studying Buddhism. It's not like that. Most of the time, even if you practice for half an hour every morning, but have you really abided in the view of impermanence during the meditation? Some people spend the first 15 minutes feeling drowsy, then roughly perform a bit of analytical meditation, and later start mind-wandering. In such a case, although you claim you have practiced for half an hour, the duration that really counts as practice might be fewer than 10 minutes. In this way, our practice is indeed very difficult, especially for lazy people who will easily get exhausted from studying and practicing Dharma. In the Sutra on the Mahayana practice of the 6 perfections, there's a metaphor for laziness. A lazy person is like a mortar pestle. There are 2 metaphors for lazy people, which include 2 characteristics. First, the pestle cannot stand on its own. Second, it is unable to activate and move itself. If a person slacks off, on one hand, they are not motivated to practice Dharma, and this is the biggest difficulty. On the other hand, they can't truly control themselves and manage their own time properly. I feel the biggest obstacle to our practice is laziness, which prevents us from practicing diligently. If you're not diligent, you certainly won't have the view of impermanence. Hence, you may inevitably sleep in late into the morning, even sleep in for several hours. You say it's impermanent, but, whatever. Impermanence is just impermanence. I need to get some more sleep. In this way, when will you succeed in your practice? Past eminent masters were not like this. They were motivated by their conviction in impermanence, so that they couldn't slack no matter what. They were driven to practice and remained undistracted throughout the day, rendering themselves immune to meaningless pursuits. I can see many of the Bodhi Association students' understanding of impermanence is really quite different from most secular people. In the past, they too were muddled and confused every day, spending their time eating, drinking, and having fun, passing decades like this without any aim. Now, although sometimes they get distracted, after being distracted, they feel ashamed. I didn't practice well all day today. I'm such a bad person. Some of them may start to punish themselves. Some pull their hair, some pinch their skin, and others use their fists to punch themselves. These can be effective to motivate themselves and boost our inner strength while practicing Dharma. So, many eminent masters have inspiring life stories in this regard. We can speak and listen, but if our practice on impermanence is not well established, it will be difficult for us to make good progress in other practices. Therefore, we very much hope, even if you cannot fully emulate past eminent masters who devoted all their time to practice, at least you should start behaving differently from how you did in the past, and you should avoid slacking off. Otherwise, you can't succeed in either mundane or transcendental matters. I encourage everyone to be diligent, and with good foundational practice on impermanence, you will naturally have a drive to practice. In fact, as you progress on the path, there comes a point where you will begin practicing voluntarily, rather than be supervised and pushed by others every day. If you always need others' supervision, for example, today your Dharma teacher comes to advise you to practice well. Tomorrow your tutor comes to encourage you to practice well. Without being pushed by them, you won't practice on your own. If you have the sense of self-motivation, wouldn't that be great? Unfortunately, we ordinary people are like children. For a child, the parents and teachers are always saying beside and telling, "You should do your homework. If you don't, you'll get punished. No dinner for you today." They constantly supervise the child. Without this supervision, the child might think, Mom and Dad are not around. I can watch TV now. Yay. The child won't necessarily develop self-discipline. Similarly, without the guidance of a qualified teacher, we will remain idle and be lazy every day. Therefore, I truly hope that everyone must pray to the Guru and the three jewels to truly generate conviction of impermanence within. I think only then our practice won't easily become distracted, and we will dare not slack off in our practice. But because we haven't achieved the state of practice yet, many people are relatively distracted for now. For now, it is imperative that we need to understand the principle of impermanence first, and then put it into action. Okay, let's stop here.
Bandara